The legend himself, George Dewey, on the screen. This is the commander build I'm using for the Georgia. Hello, I am Xarkun, and this is World of Warships Legends. So, I was playing the Georgia with my Sims build, and Sims is pretty good, right? Most people probably use him as their commander on most of their American battleships, if not all of them, but the Sims commander build is lacking one thing in one aspect, and that is survivability. Sims is all about accuracy, right? But I'm not really a subscriber to the theory that battleship accuracy builds are the be-all, end-all, most effective, most competitive battleship builds you can possibly create, period. Some people think that, but I'm not one of them. So I don't mind non-accuracy or, I suppose, non-Sims-like commanders on my battleships. Sometimes I even prefer it without the Sims-like commander. Like, for example, I use Kedrov on the Russian line. But in getting rid of Sims, there's something I'm more concerned about than giving up the accuracy skills, and that is giving up the extra range. I'm more concerned about the range for commander alternatives on the American battleships in particular. So I wanted to try something other than Sims, but I wanted a commander build that would grant me some extra range without sacrificing an inspiration slot to Megatron. And I also wanted one that came with extra heals. The George's heals are, pretty good. Well, if you want a battleship build that allows for range and extra healing, all in the same set of commander skills for the American line, then George Dewey is your only choice. But that's not the only reason he might be attractive for the Georgia in particular. Now, in his third row of skills, Dewey has an option to increase the ship's speed. And in his second row, he has an option to decrease the ship's concealment. Pop on Kondo for an extra concealment inspiration if you want. And you've got a Georgia with a top speed of 35 knots. And that's without the engine boost active, keep in mind. And a sea detectability range of 13.2 kilometers by sea. But how is the accuracy? Well, if you're wondering, here's a broadside Iowa at 17.3 kilometers. And he's dead. So, the accuracy is it's fine. Anyway, now that I've gotten a hold of myself after that rather nice dev strike, we should keep one thing in mind. In order to address Dewey's shortcomings when it comes to putting accurate shells downrange, there are some things you can do, and a lot of people forget this, but it of course starts with the modules. We do have the Aiming Systems Mod 1 installed, which decreases dispersion by 7%, and then the American battleships at the higher tiers have unique access to the Artillery Plotting Room mod, which of course we also have installed, and that decreases the accuracy by a further 11%. And then, for good measure, I added Azurlane Scharnhorst on as an inspiration, and I think that's an additional, 5% buff to dispersion. Now, of course, if you want to try out this Boss Dewey build, you could use some different inspirations, Cunningham, for example, in place of Azurlane Scharnhorst, or maybe you don't really want to build into the concealment, as I have, and you want to build into the speed even more. You could try Guiprat, the French commander. I'm probably butchering his name, but he's the brawling French commander. His base trait increases battleship speed. Of course, if you're going to build solely for speed, I think it's probably helpful to not do that and to instead build a little bit for concealment, as I've done. It can allow you a little bit more leeway when it comes to engaging enemy ships, and with your very, very quick speed, you can use that extra concealment to disengage if things get too hot and heavy and all that kind of stuff. Right now, we're using that extra speed, though, to close the distance between ourselves and the Lenin. There is something stopping us, though, and that is the enemy Shimakaze out there, or rather the Kagero. Well, okay, he was going to be an obstacle for us, but he's been taken out and killed by, I think it's the friendly Shimakaze. So we're good to go. We can go and approach this Lenin and Georgia now. And you might be thinking to yourself after that dev strike on the Iowa earlier, can the accuracy on these guns be consistent without sims? And I think, at least in this game, the answer is yes. Now, this might be a fluke. This was the very first game I played with this build, but I don't know, 2 dev strikes on 2 pretty full health battleships in a row, one at 17 kilometers and one at point blank range. Can you really argue with it? In fact, can we settle the argument and make it 3 dev strikes on 3 battleships? Unfortunately, I don't think so. Maybe we can get these shells over the island. The game said we could, but no. Only 1 shell gets over, and of course it's an over-penetration, so I guess science can no longer be performed here, and we won't really know. But I do think I am going to continue testing out this Dewey build. This was the very first game I played with it, and the results were so good and so entertaining that I just, thought they had to go on YouTube, or at least I think they're entertaining. There's 12k on an angled Georgia right into his superstructure as he kites away from us. I will say that this game also is fairly competitive. Each team holds 2 caps, and we're kind of going around the map in a clockwise circle here. It's pretty evenly matched. The only thing right now that is of concern is this Georgia. Now, he is kiting away. He's got me on his tail and both of my team's destroyers. But there is a thing about following kiting ships. You don't generally want to do it. Not really if you're in a battleship, but we can follow this guy a little bit, thanks to the Georgia's excellent speed. Our ultimate goal, however, needs to be to turn away, probably get into that delta cap, and start contesting it, if not, take it outright. Because the point situation is pretty close. I mean, we're more than 100 points, or less than 100 points ahead of the enemy team. We're even on ships, the same number of battleships versus the same number of destroyers, same number of caps, all that. We don't want to get tied down forever trying to kill this Georgia, just in case the other enemy ships, which are pretty much on the other side of the map, are able to take out our teammates over there. We want to turn around and try to assist them. We'll leave the 2 destroyers to deal with this Georgia. Surely that can be enough. The only question is, can we turn away from this guy? And I think the answer is yes. He's been, for whatever reason, spamming high explosive the entire time. So if we perform a turn here, he's probably not going to send armor piercing our way and get some sort of crazy citadel. The only question is, can we replicate the same damage that we got on him earlier when he was angled? And it looks like the answer is no. That's probably because his superstructure is pretty saturated. But you can see the dispersion. I mean, every now and then it's pretty wonky and wild. It's not the most consistent, but it dials in pretty well, and most of the shells do hit, at least in this game. Again, this could be a fluke. This really isn't science, despite what I might have told you earlier. Here, the concealment, by the way, could come in handy. Our concealment range is 9.2 kilometers by sea, and I was... not 9.2, that would be insane. God tier concealment for a battleship. 13.2 kilometers by sea. And I was debating on putting out this fire with the damage control, because we're further away from the Georgia than 13.2 kilometers, and further away than these 2 battleships. Or if we're not, they're behind an island right now. But of course that Khabarovsk was spotting us, so the concealment isn't going to actually do us any good here. Nevertheless, we've got a Tirpitz out there, broadside at 12.8 kilometers. I don't think we quite led him well enough. We're turning away, though. We don't want to sail out of this cap. 11 seconds away from securing it. Hopefully we can before this Tirpitz, or worse, the Yamato behind him, returns fire at us and resets our progress. 5k hit there, decent, but not enough. We lose sight of the Tirpitz, regain it immediately, and we're turning away, shooting the shells. Once again, we don't really take the proper lead, and we miss the... No, we don't miss the Tirpitz entirely, but we only get 1 penetration and 1 overpen. Yamato comes around the corner, and this, well, that was potentially death. Luckily, it didn't turn out that way. I don't think he citadeled us there. He just got some nice meaty penetrations. My 2 destroyer teammates, though, they finished off the Georgia in pretty quick fashion, and they've moved back down here toward the caps where, you know, the important stuff is. One of them is getting into Alpha and beginning to flip it. There are 2 destroyers left on the enemy team, of course, so potentially they're out there to counter my teammates. One of them is a Khabarovsk, who I think finishes this battle with 4 kills, so he certainly didn't... he wasn't slacking, let's just say, and I think he gets the high caliber, just like us, by the way. There's our high caliber medal. We're up to 150,000 damage. I think he gets the high caliber and the Confederate and a lot of medals, actually. He does very well. In fact, the people on the top of the leaderboard for the enemy team, they do a pretty great job, and despite the fact that we are pretty significantly ahead of the enemy team on points right now, that's thanks to our better control of the caps. Either way, this was a pretty well-played game for both teams, and it's not really something that you expect to see too often. We go down there, and our reign of terror ends. 153,000 damage done, 2 devastating strikes, and a high-caliber medal. But the Tirpitz goes down, and the Yamato went down as well. Didn't actually quite catch that. But now it's 1 friendly battleship. I don't know what it is. He looks like he's about to die to the torpedoes of these destroyers. Maybe not. Looks like maybe he dodged. So this friendly battleship, 2 friendly destroyers versus 2 enemy destroyers, and we pretty much... Well, the battleship goes down. We pretty much have all the caps. Looks like our Shimakaze and Alpha is going to be able to flip that. And in fact, these 2 destroyers, they're not going to go out hunting for the 2 enemies. The Shima, of course, isn't going to stand up to a Khabarovsk in a gunfight. And the Kleber is on pretty low health. Instead, these 2 guys are going to play it smart, and they're just going to take the caps and retreat. There's less than 3 minutes left to go, so we should be able to comfortably win on points, even if one of the enemy destroyers does manage to get into one of these blue caps and start flipping it. It's probably not going to be enough so long as these guys stay alive. And in fact, that is the way it turns out. I won't have you watch the rest of this battle because it's just these guys sort of running away from the enemy destroyers. I don't think they actually get spotted, and I don't think there's actually any more fighting. But I think this was a pretty good and pretty entertaining game in the Georgia with the Boss Dewey build. Hope you found it entertaining and perhaps informative. Let me know what you think of the Boss Dewey build in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.